filling that site above flood level?
First question was, that he answered I don't know to, was, are any of the sites in 100-year floodplain? Was that correct? And then what are the relative costs if one of those sites is?
Well, is that not far more reaching? Full environmental impact, filling above the 100-year floodplain. I mean, you're talking 75 feet to 5,000 feet long just for the runway.
What additional challenges does building in a 100-year floodplain would that be?
Would that maybe double the cost? I mean, you're talking lots and lots of fill.
The Broadus airport that we took had taken a look at was in the 100-year floodplain. And what we had to do there was determine the impacts to the floodplain caused by the AU airport on the existing site. And yes, we were going to, we looked at a couple of alternatives to raise the airport up high enough to get it out of the floodplain, and also to build a flood protection dike on the south side of the airport to prevent the flood from impacting the airport. But the answer to your question is yes, there's a whole lot of paperwork and study that would go along with that to determine the impacts, and there would be additional cost to protect the airport against an encroaching flood.
Nancy, you were next.
Craig, I was trying to ask you and maybe some of the others too, I wasn't stating this very well, but the question I have is that there are existing airports in some of these communities and they have X amount of direct and in-use benefits currently on them. And when we look at the things like what I think Grant is projecting and Craig you were talking about and John you talked about also, it's always these predictive types of things. And in order for that prediction to come true, every fact in that has to be followed through or fact. Are you aware, any of you aware of any place that's gone back to look at the actual outcomes versus the predictions? Because predictions, as we well know, and anybody that does any grant work or anything like that, we always predict all of these wonderful kinds of things. But I have seen where the city hasn't been able to see those outcomes on other things. So if there's studies, is there any work that you're aware of that the outcomes were measured, not just the predictions?
So the question would be, looking at some of the other comparable sites, is there any evidence where the historical data matches the predictive data?
Well, I guess no, I'm not aware of any sites, but like the economic data that I did show for the Laurel Airport was based on actual data obtained from the airport. So we know how many jobs are at the Laurel Airport. We know what the payroll is, and then through the economic model, that's just how those dollars are spent in the community. I guess I don't know of a way to actually verify that. Maybe Grant could.
But did you have the baseline for Laurel to begin with? There was X amount of jobs and payroll prior to the expansion of an airport.
No, but I would think through the same process, you could take Colville today and determine what the economic impact of the airport is now today, and compare that to the predicted economic impact of a new airport.
Right, but that's all we can do is predict.
Right, and you won't, and I suppose all you could do is measure that at a future point in time.
Okay, other side of the room.
I've got one to the research man on her question. Does the in-plan software, is that updated with your logarithms and stuff to answer her question?
Question is, does the in-plan software have appropriate updates to get closer to answering Nancy's question?
Not quite sure how to answer you. The in-plan itself updates itself on a regular basis. For instance, we use the most recent not only modeling, but economic and business data through all the SIC codes that fit within the modeling for this community. One of the things that we did do, based on the total number of flights, and since we do not have any other economic data from the airport currently that would give us full employment, etc., we did run those numbers against the actual data that is reported by the other airports in the study. So we did look at it from that standpoint as a snapshot in time based on certain given norms. We do not have the actual numbers that she's looking for, which is very important.
Elmer?
I got a couple of questions there, three for me, okay? Does he work for FAA, for one thing?
Oh, just a second. Was that to who?
Yeah.
To Craig? Okay, do you work for the FAA?
No, I work for an engineering firm in Billings.
Second thing, are you aware of any airport that you relocated that has a Bonneville power line a quarter mile through the middle of it?
No.
Would that happen?
I mean, we have had projects where we've had utilities that we've had to relocate or move or whatnot, but not a high-powered Bonneville power line, no.
Another thing, you stated that the FAA would pay 95%, but Ben Allison was up to the meeting in Colville, and he said it would be more or less like 55% of the total cost, and nobody ever says 55% of the total cost.
Right.
Well, they have 95% of the middle down the middle of the highway road.
The FAA would likely fund 95% of the eligible project costs. And if you consider most things inside the airport fences an eligible project cost, I would imagine that they would fund those. There may be certain things at a general aviation airport that aren't necessarily fundable, like a terminal building. That would not be an eligible project cost at a general aviation airport. It would be at a commercial service airport, but not at a general aviation airport. Certain things like water and sewer into the airport would be at a general aviation airport and ineligible costs and would have to be funded by the community.
Yes.